The Australian Financial Review.
I bought a Tesla in 2021. I wanted an EV because I was very concerned about climate change. And I felt really good about driving this car for quite a time. I don't now. I'm appalled by what's going on in the US and Elon Musk's madness.
An important shift is happening in the electric vehicle market. BYD reported more than $100 billion in annual revenue for the first time, overtaking Elon Musk's Tesla. The Chinese EV maker is firing, just as Musk's controversial politics and involvement with the Trump administration has sparked protests at Tesla dealerships around the world and triggered a slump in sales.
Hundreds of protesters have turned out here in Los Angeles on a day they've dubbed the Tesla takedown. Around the world, these demonstrations unfolding against the car company and its billionaire owner, Elon Musk.
Teslas are being vandalised and drivers are on the defensive. Some are displaying bumper stickers that say things like,
Tesla lover, Elon hater, vintage Tesla, bought this pre-madness.
It says, I bought this before Elon went crazy.
People are really angry at Elon Musk. They're really angry about his politics. They're really angry about his role in the Trump government. And people are responding.
Welcome to The Fin. I'm Lisa Murray. Today, North Asia correspondent Jessica Sire and motoring writer Tony Davis on Tesla's challenges, the rise of BYD, and whether a 5-minute battery charge could be the real game changer. It's Thursday, April 3. Hi, Tony. Hi, Jess. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Always a pleasure.
Hey, Lisa.
Tesla has had a rocky start to the year, and that's after sales fell slightly last year for their first time in the company's history. But the declines have really accelerated this year, with some markets reporting drops of more than 70%. What's going on?
Yeah, I think sales are falling for two main reasons. The first is people are really angry at Elon Musk.
Hey, hey, ho, ho! Elon Musk has got to go!
They're really angry about his politics. They're really angry about his role in the Trump government.
The movement saw demonstrations at more than 200 Tesla dealerships across the globe Saturday.
Nobody voted for him.
And we want people to think twice before they buy Teslas.
And people are really publicly angry about this. There have been protests at Tesla dealerships around the world. In Las Vegas, someone was actually arrested for throwing a Molotov cocktail at a dealership. So there's sort of this undercurrent of violence. He's also been supporting these far-right political parties in Europe, and people are responding.
Help me pick which anti-Elon Musk bumper sticker I'm going to get to put on the back of my Tesla Y.
People are selling their own Teslas secondhand, and they're actually not going to the shop. Sales in Germany have slumped 76%. And investment banks and research houses like JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, guys that cover this stock and have looked at it for a long time, they've been re-rating it south because the brand equity is getting damaged. And stuff like that, like the relationship that people have with the brand Tesla, these kinds of things are hugely valuable to car companies because people don't make car purchases that frequently. So the damage that Musk has done to Tesla has prompted these research houses to re-rate the stock. The other reason that sales are falling is because Tesla used to have such a stronghold in China. It was one of the few global car manufacturers that was really enjoying electric vehicle growth in the mainland. But China's really developed its own EV market. It's not just BYD. There's NIO, Geely, Zeekr, and all these different car companies are releasing cheaper and much more innovative cars.
So in Australia, for example, Tesla sales dropped 72% in February, which was unprecedented. Now, Tesla claims that this was because they're in between models. To some extent, that's true, but they're still clearing stock of the Model Y, which is the model that will be replaced in May. Tesla has been picking up sales every year since the early 2000s when it started. there's been this rise both of the number of cars that they've sold, the number of places they've built them, and also their revenue has risen each year. This is the first time that's sort of changed. They've got an enormous amount of competition from now all around the world. The Europeans are getting their act together. The Chinese juggernaut is just enormous. It's almost incomprehensible just how big the Chinese industry is, and it's kind of snuck up on us all.
Jess, before we talk about what's happening in China, I want to ask you about the Musk effect. Talk us through his political transformation and why that is alienating Tesla's core customer base.
He has been talking about electrifying the transport sector in the US for 10 or 20 years. And as a result, he sort of garnered this huge base of support from investors and the public who were really pushing for this kind of future. And that's been really useful for the stock price. But as we've been saying, I mean, he's lurched to the right.
I'm very excited for the AfD. I think you're really the best hope for Germany. I think there's frankly too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that.
And that is not where his core Tesla customer base is. And generally, this transformation of Musk into this really libertarian, hard-nosed Republican has actually started to hurt the business. And for better or worse, I mean, Trump's actually come out and tried to help Musk. But whether or not those kind of things actually boost sales, we've kind of got to hang about and wait. But a lot of the investment banks, a lot of the high-profile investors tend to think not. And the problem for Musk is that the average Trump voter is not your typical Tesla customer. It's also worth mentioning that the role Musk has taken at DOGE, which is this advisory body helping the government sort of streamline costs, if you like, lots of investors are kind of worried that that's distracted Musk from the Tesla business. I mean, he's still the chief executive officer, but he's spending a lot of time at the White House and not necessarily making decisions for Tesla as a company.
And Tony, before we started recording, you actually told me a very interesting theory about how the political transformation of Musk is being reflected in Tesla's design.
If you look at the early Tesla cars, the Model 3, for example, is a very elegant design, and it's a very soft design. The design language is almost feminine. And if you look at the Cybertruck, it's completely different. And in a sense, the Cybertruck is the new Musk. It's machismo, it's angry, it's sharp edges, it's all those sort of things. All the things the earlier cars were not. So it'll be interesting to see if Tesla gets a new car out, and it hasn't had a new car for quite some time, whether it's going to reflect the new Musk or the old Tesla.
So, Jess, Musk now has this advisory role with the Trump administration, and that's raised questions about conflicts of interest across his business empire. How will Tesla be affected by Trump's decision last week to impose a 25% tariff on imported cars? Does it stand to benefit?
Tesla is somewhat insulated from the tariffs, but I mean, the company does import a few of its car parts into the States, and it's likely they'll get hit by the tariffs. But it's kind of better off than a lot of the other car companies because it makes a lot of cars in America, in Texas and in California. So the cars that are made at these facilities are relatively insulated from the tariffs. One of the other things that's kind of iffy for investors and people looking at the stock is the relationship between Trump and Musk and whether or not Musk has actually been advising on some of this auto policy. As it stands, I mean, President Trump has denied talking about the tariffs with Musk. At an Oval Office event last Wednesday, when Trump signed this proclamation putting the auto tariffs in place, Trump said, Musk has never asked me for a favor in business whatsoever, and that he was actually a bit surprised by that. And Musk made the point that Tesla would be affected. I mean, as I said, they do import some of their parts into the States, but whether or not it's as damaging as it's going to be to other car companies, like the Japanese, for instance, are going to get completely whacked by this. So whether or not Tesla's in the same basket as those is unlikely.
So Tesla's challenges come as the Chinese EV market, and BYD in particular, are on a tear. BYD had its results last week. Jess, you covered them. What did they tell us?
Well, they really told us that they're making a lot of money.
BYD stock is a buy now. Has a market cap that is bigger than Ford plus GM.
Boy, oh boy, I should have kept my BYD stock. Now,
BYD reported revenue of $107 billion in 2024. That is much higher than Tesla's $97.7 billion. And while Tesla as a company remains more profitable and is more highly valued on the stock market, the Chinese manufacturer BYD has benefited from a real resurgent demand for hybrid and electric cars in its domestic market. And as we know, if you can get your claws into the Chinese market, the sheer size of the thing, the amount of people that are moving into the middle class who are prepared to buy electric vehicles, that is a huge fire underneath your EV company, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
BYD's popularity in China has also helped it offset steep import tariffs in the US and the European Union.
And the tariffs are steep. The US has imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, so that's really an effective ban.
Yeah, but the capacity of these Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers is enormous. They are making so many cars, and they're not even at capacity yet. And BYD is expanding into really fast-growing markets, like in South America. They've invested heavily in a Brazilian car plant. And it's not just BYD that's expanding in these places. It's all the other Chinese EV makers. Zeekr and Li Auto and NIO are all building market share in these very fast-growing, emerging and developing markets.
Mm.
One of BYD's biggest technological advantages is its assisted driving software, which it rolled out more than 12 months ago. If you think about the Chinese consumers, they are all really comfortable using self-assisted driving technology. And BYD has been a real leader in this tech. And they've been rolling it out in their cars free of charge across the market. That's another thing Tesla is struggling to compete on. But the reversal of Tesla's fortunes is particularly obvious in China. As I said, it's the world's largest and most competitive EV market. Tesla's shipments from its Shanghai factory have declined for 5 consecutive months. That's a 49% slump in February to just over 30,000 vehicles. Meanwhile, BYD, on the flip side, sold more than 10 times that amount.
Mm.
So just some more numbers. BYD's total vehicle deliveries were more than 4 million last year, and that's getting close to Ford's volume. In February alone, BYD enjoyed a 161% increase from the previous year.
Yes, the Chinese car industry, it's on a scale we have never seen before. It's simply extraordinary. They built more than 30 million cars last year. Motorized vehicles around the world, I think it was 90 million was the entire. So it's a third of all production in this one country. And it's sort of snuck up on people, certainly Westerners, they haven't really realized it was happening, that it was increasing year on year at such an extraordinary rate. BYD has been the beneficiary of some smart tech, some good organization, and rather like Japan in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, those periods of enormous growth, it's had a system behind it that has got the supplier industry really effective. So the things that nobody cares about but everyone needs are being built at enormous scale, just simply unprecedented scale, and supplied very efficiently to all the new car makers. So they have a production advantage, a cost advantage that no one else can come close to matching. And now BYD has announced a battery that will charge in 5 minutes, which is, of course, hardly more time than it takes to fuel a conventional car with petrol. Now, this is either a great bit of trolling, because it's certainly got an enormous amount of publicity and it's probably affected the Tesla share price, or it's a step change in battery use in cars. So if BYD's 5-minute charging turns out to be true, and if it is possible to build an infrastructure to support it, well, of course, it's an enormous change for electric cars.
Tony and Jess, we're talking about the rise of Chinese EV makers, which is happening at the same time as Tesla, the pioneer, is struggling. Last week, BYD had its results and reported revenue of more than $100 billion overtaking Tesla. It also recently unveiled a battery that it says will charge a car in 5 minutes. Is this the real deal, and how significant is this development for the electric vehicle market?
Yes, we don't know that much about this miracle charging yet. It might be very hard on the battery. We don't know whether it really works. But if it works, if it doesn't affect the longevity of the battery, and if we can build up an infrastructure that will do it, then we have an enormous change in the viability of electric cars. You could drive across the country without any real inconvenience if we have an infrastructure. Whether it can be done is another question. But what is absolutely true is that batteries are getting better and better, and the Chinese are leading that charge. It seems that in China, they're moving really quickly. So any gain they have now, it's going to be very hard to catch up with as they move forward.
And the market reacted really strongly to BYD's announcement. They got really excited about the idea of 5-minute charging because one of the major roadblocks for people buying electric vehicles is range anxiety. People don't like the idea of being in the middle of the road and running out of power. And the other thing is they don't like the idea that it takes 40 minutes, half an hour or an hour to actually charge your car. I mean, we go into the petrol station, it takes 5 minutes to fill up your car and you're on your way. Whereas an EV, you've kind of got to plan your day differently. And so that behavioral change is an obstacle to purchasing. So if the Chinese have managed to figure out a way to fast charge an EV in 5 minutes, that behavioral shift doesn't need to happen, right? It's very similar to the way we fill up a combustion engine car with petrol. It's also worth noting that traditionally, Chinese technology has never really been world-class. But recently, there have been a whole bunch of tech breakthroughs out of China that have really surprised the Americans. America's tech industry, particularly its software development, is so far ahead of everyone else that when this artificial intelligence model called DeepSeek was released earlier this year out of China, everyone was kind of shocked. The American engineers that were looking at the baseline code of DeepSeek were really shocked at how innovative it was. You could do so much more with this technology. And so there's this perception that's changing now about Chinese technology. When the Chinese release something, it's usually quite high quality now. And that's a bit of a change. So I think if the 5-minute charging comes out of a reputable Chinese company like BYD, it sends a message to the market that if they say they can do it, they can probably do it. And that is a real, I think, existential threat to a company like Tesla, which is falling behind on the innovation front.
So, Tony, last time we had you on the podcast, we were talking about when might be the tipping point in the EV market in Australia. And one of the main obstacles you talked about was charging infrastructure. So how is EV take-up going in Australia, and will BYD's breakthroughs, or on the other side, the challenges that Tesla is facing, have an impact?
Okay, so I don't think Tesla is going to change much the take-up because there are so many other people now involved in it. It's been a general disappointment to the EV market that the very fast rise of a couple of years ago has not been sustained. We're sort of at about 8%, but the growth at the moment has slowed. We still have growth. It's now from here going to depend on how quickly battery technology improves, and the Chinese are leading this. But if we get faster and faster charging, if you could charge an EV in 5 minutes, the game is over really for petrol engines, except in a few sort of specific cases. But generally for a car driven around the city, already an electric car is better. So if you can make batteries cheaper and if you can make them lighter and quicker to charge, then again, yes, an enormous advantage for electric cars. But it might be a while before we see such a step change in Australia.
So then do you see that 8% figure in terms of Australia's take-up of EVs jumping up significantly?
There have been a lot of predictions. Half the market would be electric by 2030, things like that. They seem to be too optimistic. Volvo in Australia was going to be all electric by next year. That doesn't seem to be the case. Many other car companies that had given us a date for an all-electric future are pulling back on that. So we seem to have a slower take-up than we had thought. I think it will improve as batteries improve, and it will sneak up on us. And I think it will improve as the Chinese get more high-quality cars into this market. They are doing an amazing job. The cars that they are producing in terms of quality, in terms of technology, etc., are extremely good already. And their model turnaround times are so much quicker than Europe. They're flipping cars every 2 years. They're just updating. It's going to be very hard for other people to keep up.
Yeah. This kind of technology is not only going to boost take-up in Australia, it's likely to boost take-up around the world. I mean, when you look at some of the climate goals in really fast-growing economies like India, in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, they're quite baked into the legislation or into the governments themselves. And so the electrification of the transport industry, it's unlikely to stop. So if the Chinese can provide electric vehicles that are high quality and at a low price point, and the range anxiety issue is kind of dealt with the 5-minute charge, for example, then it's unlikely they're going to see growth slow so materially in these emerging markets.
A final couple of questions for both of you. Do you think this backlash against Tesla is temporary? Could it change, for example, if Musk was to redirect his attention back to the business and away from politics? Or do you think this shift in the EV market is more long-term and Tesla could lose its dominant market position in Australia and around the globe?
Tesla's market domination was extraordinary in the EV market. It has been chipped away in recent times, and recently we've seen a cliff fall in quite a few markets, a lot of the European markets, and certainly in the Australian market. I think it will never, ever have the dominance that it once had. I think it will continue to decline. 2 years ago, Musk said they would be building 20 million cars a year and that they would double their sales each year. Clearly, that hasn't happened. And I think that sort of outlook is completely and utterly fantastical. So personally, I can't think of a similar situation in any business where a leader is so polarizing that there would be enormous problems if he left, and there are enormous problems if he stays. Musk and Tesla, in many people's minds, are indivisible. And this, I think, is an enormous problem for the company.
Yeah. If Musk was to leave his duties at Doge and go back to running Tesla full time, I don't really have much doubt that that would be very good for the company. I think investors would be quite cheered by the idea they've got his full attention again. But whether or not the damage he's done to the brand equity is recoverable, that's a much longer term question.
So Jess, if you're looking at Tesla and BYD, which has the better outlook?
BYD is probably a more attractive investment opportunity. Not only does it supply its own batteries, for instance, not only does it have these enormous economies of scale, not only is it rolling out really advanced technology at a competitive price point, it's also got the support of the Chinese government. And when you're looking at investment opportunities in China, often the sovereign risk of the Chinese government is quite high. I mean, they could just change their mind and, your company could be floundering. But the advanced manufacturing goal of the Communist Party in China, this massive shift they've done to change their economy towards the future technologies, electric vehicles are one of the core pillars of that. And BYD has absolutely been pegged as one of China's champion companies.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks a lot, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to The Fin. I'm Lisa Murray, with the Financial Review's North Asia correspondent Jessica Sayer and motoring writer Tony Davis reporting today. The Fin is produced by Alex Gao. Lap Fan is head of podcast. Fiona Buffini is head of premium content. Our theme is by Alex Gao. If you like the show and want to hear more, follow us wherever you get your podcasts and consider rating and reviewing us as it helps others find us. The federal election campaign has kicked off and The Fin is releasing a special weekly podcast. Every Tuesday, I'll be joined by political editor Phil Curry and our other Canberra experts to break down the big issues. For more stories about markets, business and power, subscribe to The Financial Review at afr.com/subscribe. See you next week.
The Australian Financial Review.